All right, back with another tier rankings here. It's a week 7 edition of the tier rankings. I think an interesting week just happened. A lot of upsets, so plenty of things to talk about and sort of evaluate where we're at with some of these teams. The Cincinnati Bengals, I still feel like they're for sure playoffs. However, ... The start to the season hasn't been great for them. I still feel like they're a really talented team. I think they're going to turn it around. The only, the however is still just, they haven't looked like a Super Bowl contender right yet, so I can't put them in that tier. But yeah, they're there. The Giants did just come off a win. Listen, I don't know what it's going to take for the Giants to get me to buy in, but they haven't done it yet. I still think they're plucky but bad. They're not a terrible team. And I would say, slight credit to me. A couple weeks ago, I think a lot of people would have had them in the just bad tier. I've always kind of maintained they're plucky, but they are still not a good football team. The Niners are a good football team. They are Super Bowl contenders, in my opinion. I don't think that's too hot of a take. They've been just about perfect other than a weird game in weird weather in Cleveland. Yeah, Super Bowl contenders for them. The Saints are an interesting one. The Saints are one that can go either way. I think you could argue, I think some people would have them into maybe playoffs. Some people would have them in mid. Some people would have them in plucky but bad. I think I am going to go with mid. I still feel like there is talent and there is a ceiling here. At the end of the day, I don't know, some of these players are kind of relying on name brand recognition at this point, right? Like Derek Carr, I do think is a talented player, but he's not playing like it right now and didn't play like it last year, so maybe he's not. I don't know. Michael Thomas, I kind of joked about it on the podcast a couple weeks ago of like him coming in and just playing like fine football was easily the wildest outcome possible, so that's interesting. But yeah, as a whole, I just think that they got to play better if I can put them higher. Also, I realize I'm kind of going sideways hat here. That's not a look I was intending on. I'm just stupid and don't know how to put on a hat, apparently. The Bears, I don't know. Plucky but bad feels right. Hey, you won for your backup quarterback. I didn't think that would happen. Sure, you were playing Brian Hoyer. Still, being able to win with a backup quarterback, I thought that this team was nowhere near good enough to do that. So they're not a good team, but they're in that tier. And the Green Bay Packers, I've had them in mid for a bit. I can't put them in mid anymore. In fact, I'm actually debating, do I even put them in just bad? Because, well, there is things to like, and I don't think I can. I think I still have to put them in plucky but bad. They're not worse than the Giants. They're not worse than Chicago. But man, I mean, this is not looking great here for the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love has not looked good. People are blaming LaFleur. I don't know what you expect him to do with this offense you're throwing out there for him to try and coach. Like, I think that he had some good play calls that the players weren't executing when I watched the game. So, only so much an offensive coordinator can do, in my opinion. The Arizona Cardinals, they're bad. They were plucky for a while. It's not great. The Josh Dobbs thing was fun story for a bit. There's I don't know. They're banged up, which is already not good because they're not a great team. As is, not to have injuries. They're just not a good football team. Sorry, Cardinals fans. But you're rebuilding. It is what it is. You're going in the right direction by going in the wrong direction this year. That's kind of how it works. The Ravens, you know what? Let's do it. Super Bowl contenders. I'm going to bump them up to that tier. Maybe this is an overreaction to one great game, but it was a great game against the Detroit Lions. The Lions were in the Super Bowl contending tier for these past few weeks, and the Ravens destroyed them. If you're already in the for sure playoffs, however, tier, and you do that, it's at least going to make me consider bumping you up a tier. And I don't know. They're definitely a team that if things go perfectly, they can contend for a Super Bowl. So again, the way I kind of define Super Bowl contender is a team that should either win the Super Bowl or lose to another team that's in the Super Bowl contending tier. That kind of feels like Baltimore for me personally. Cowboys are still for sure playoffs, however. I still think they're in the playoffs. Defense is still very good. Offense has looked better. And I still think there's some flaws. But even the run defense for Dallas has looked better after a couple of shaky performances. So they're in that tier. The Bills, are we going for another hot take here? Because my hot take previously was I had them in the for sure playoffs, however, tier, but, and people thought that was a bit hot takey, and clearly that's, at very least, where they belong positively. They're not a Super Bowl contender. They're not. After what they've done these past few weeks, I'm putting them in maybe playoffs. I just am. They're a fundamentally flawed football team, and with the injuries they have, it was kind of like, well, their offense has some issues, but Josh Allen will do enough because he's awesome and they have a good defense. The defense isn't great now. It made Mac Jones, Mac Jones looked good against them. That's never good. And there's just too many holes offensively. So they can climb tiers. Again, this is how you are right now. This isn't where you're going to end up. This is how I view you right now. Right now, they are maybe a playoff team. I think they'll still get in, but I can't say for sure right now. I just can't. I can't say for sure right now. The Chargers are plucky but bad. I mean, that's just how I have to view them right now. They're, Justin Herbert, I still think is really good. I think he's getting too much criticism. He's not Patrick Mahomes, right? He's not one of those superstar quarterbacks. He's not Joe Burrow, but he's still really good. I think plucky but bad feels fine for me. But yeah, there's so many issues going on there. Brandon Staley might not keep his job. The Broncos, hey, you beat Green Bay. I still don't think you're a very good football team, but I don't know. Maybe I'm feeling generous. I'll put you in the plucky but bad tier as well. Russell Wilson's looked solid. Defense has kind of rebounded after a couple of really rough weeks, so maybe they figured something out there. I don't know, but plucky but bad. The Detroit Lions, I don't want to do it to them. They were in Super Bowl contenders. They can't be in there now. They've dropped a tier. You lose a game like that. The Ravens have now taken your spot in the Super Bowl contenders tier. Actually, it could be a Super Bowl rematch between Ravens and Niners with those two teams. But the Lions, it was not good. It just wasn't good. I think that there is maybe a bit of a matchup issue now with a team that does like to mix things up. If they play the Lions, that could be trouble because we've seen Tampa Bay and Baltimore do that now. I don't think it's a big deal because, again, you have to have the personnel to pull that kind of thing off. Those might be the only two teams that do have the personnel to pull that exact scheme off and make that kind of thing happen. So certainly not a disaster, but still not ideal in that scenario. And then the Lions defense didn't look great against the Ravens, and that's a bit concerning as well. Maybe some of the secondary depth really coming, really not playing well in this game. So there's still a ton to like about the Lions. I still think they're a really good team, but it's a disappointing week, and so I drop them a tier. The Kansas City Chiefs, yeah, they're Super Bowl contenders. Things are going pretty well for them. They've lost once. That was to the Lions, and that was kind of in a weird game, right? I mean, if it wasn't for that drop pass by Kadarius Toney, which won, right? If it wasn't for those many drop passes by Kadarius Toney, they're undefeated right now and reigning Super Bowl champs and have the best player in the sport. Super Bowl contenders. Atlanta, I don't know. I'm part of me. I am still kind of considering plucky but bad, but I will go mid. I think the mid tier is just the NFC South tiered. I think that's kind of where it's at. There's still stuff to like about Atlanta, and at the end of the day, I am someone on this channel that kind of constantly talks about if you don't have the quarterback, a lot of the other stuff doesn't matter. It just doesn't. But they do have a lot of the other stuff, right? They still do have talented skill players, even if they don't throw it to them very often. They still do have a really good defense. And the defense, I think, is really underrated. And that's a real positive thing to talk about. They can play two safeties deep. They can play quarters coverage all game and still stop the run. That's really difficult to do. They can do that. So they're going to win some football games, but Desmond Ridder has to play better football. You can't turn the ball over in the red zone 3 times and win very many football games. But they were able to win this one because of the positive they have. So they're still mid for me. The Eagles are Super Bowl contenders and proved it last week, beating Miami, who was another team in the Super Bowl contender tier. Multiple teams in my Super Bowl contender tier last week lost. But the Eagles, really good stuff. They were able to, their defense came alive against Miami. And I don't want to say came alive, but is really good and showed it again. Defensive line, incredible. And their offense is looking a lot more like last year's offense now. So, yeah, they belong there in my opinion. Next up, the Cleveland Browns, who I have been lower on than a lot of other people have been. I did talk about, again, it's the quarterback thing, right? It's the same thing with Atlanta. If you're a quarterback away, you're still pretty far away. Deshaun Watson has looked borderline unplayable since coming over to Cleveland. PJ Walker's not a disaster, but he's not good. And there are things to like about this team. Myles Garrett is obviously amazing, but he's not going to directly give you 17 points every week. That's just not. He'll do it every now and then, and it'll be awesome when it works, and it'll win you a couple football games a year. But it's not going to, do a ton. The defense didn't look as good this week. I think that's reasonable to say with the high point totals allowed. There still are some really good things to like about this team. I still think that, I don't know. I'm still putting them in maybe playoffs. I just am. I know Browns fans. I know. Browns fans don't like me. It is what it is. But, like, I keep saying, this is the team that I typically bet against. I typically bet against a team that is, well, we're going to play good defense and run the ball. And who cares that we don't have a good quarterback? We'll find a way to make the playoffs. Usually you don't. Usually you end up falling short. Like, people said I was too low on the Colts with Carson Wentz. How'd that work out, right? Like, every year, this is what happens. Maybe it'll work out for sure. I could easily see them getting into the playoffs, but I don't know. That's where I have them right now. Houston Texans, I think I'm also going to put them in the maybe playoffs tier. Team that did not play this past Sunday, but, I can't remember if I put them in maybe playoffs or mid, but that's around where they're at. The Colts are another team that, I don't know, I feel like they're mid. Like, hey, Gardner Minshew has his ups and downs. Offensive line's good. They can't, in theory, they can run the ball. The defense has played well, although, again, give a lot of points in this one. A lot of that was Myles Garrett figuring out ways to get points. So, still think the Colts defense played well, despite the high score in that one. But I still think there's not a lot of great stuff there for them. So, putting them in the mid-tier. We then have the Rams. The LA Rams are a team that are, again, it's just like, I think maybe playoffs feels right. Like, when I watch the Rams, they look good. They really do. But, like, you got to start winning football games. And sure, it's okay. TJ Watt made a couple crazy plays. It is what it is. Steelers, voodoo magic. You're still 3-4. Like, you still do have to come around and, make plays. I still think they're good enough. They belong in that tier. But, yeah, that's kind of where I have them. Man, a lot of teams are not going to be thrilled being in the maybe playoffs tier, I feel like. I thought the Rams, Browns, and Bills fans are all going to be upset. But I go where I go. The Dolphins, again, bit of a tough loss here for them against the Eagles. Offense has gotten shut down, and people have brought up you can't beat good teams now. They've struggled to beat good teams this season. I still think they're Super Bowl contenders because you're getting Jalen Ramsey back. Like, all this is like, yeah, it hasn't been perfect, but they've still been borderline Super Bowl contenders, and they're getting a superstar cornerback. There's some flaws in this team. They might be the most flawed team out of the Super Bowl contenders, but their goods are still so good. I have to put them in that tier. I just do. Next up is the Minnesota Vikings, another team who did not play this past Sunday. So again, I think I put them in the plucky but bad tier. That feels right. I'll keep them there. The Patriots had been in the just bad tier, but hey, they've bumped up a tier. They're now in the plucky but bad. A lot of plucky but bad teams currently, as they were able to beat Buffalo. Still don't know how much to take away from that, but it is something like, okay, Patriots at least aren't a complete disaster like they looked like these past couple of weeks, although maybe the Bills aren't as good as some people thought they were, including myself heading into this year. So plucky but bad feels right. The New York Football Jets are the next one, who, again, they're mid. The offense still isn't great. Has looked competent, though. That's kind of what you like. So kind of similar to like Atlanta in the sense of there's things to really like about this team, but if you don't get the quarterback down, hard to put you above mid. The Panthers are still just bad. They have not played well. The Steelers, I mean, do I put them in the... Because, like, I do think that they could maybe make the playoffs. Kenny Pickett's starting to look better. Defense is looking good. I do think that there is a bit more here offensively than some of the mid teams, but I still think... And they have a good coach. I guess the Mike Tomlin factor... Usually they would be a mid-tier team, but with Mike Tomlin and the way his teams always overperform, I'm going to put them in the maybe playoffs tier. So that's my logic there. The Seahawks, I think I have to also put them in maybe playoffs. Like, on paper, I really like this team and really feel like they are a playoff contender. But as of right now, again, like, they're just making too many mistakes. Geno Smith has not looked great this year. Like, they can turn it around for sure, but for now, maybe playoffs feels appropriate for them. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'm in between plucky but bad or mid. I think their defense is good enough, and Baker's been good enough, and to have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, mid still feels right. I told you, it's the NFC South tier. 3 out of the currently 5 teams in the mid tier are all NFC South. I think Tampa Bay belongs there. Just kind of what a weird division that has been. Next up is the Las Vegas Raiders, who are, I had been putting them in the mid tier. I think they've dropped down a tier to the plucky but bad. And I know, like, it's Brian Hoyer. I get it. I do. But, the defense didn't look as good this week against Chicago, who they had their own backup quarterback in. And it's like, I don't know. You need to be able to at least look competent with a backup quarterback, especially when you're going from Garoppolo, who's not exactly a superstar, right? So, I was kind of in between mid and plucky but bad for the past few weeks, but I was giving them the mid. I think this loss drops them down a little bit. The Titans, another team that did not play, I don't know, plucky but bad feels right. Some things to like, but not a ton. In Washington, man, what a crowded group the plucky but bad tier is, that I have to put them there. I mean, they've won enough games to not be in the just bad tier, but not by a lot. So was not expecting the plucky but bad tier to be this crowded, but here we are. Jacksonville Jaguars, to me, they're for sure playoffs, however. They still don't look as clean as maybe you would like to see them look, but as a whole, there's still plenty to like about this football team. Their defense still has looked very good. I think Lawrence has looked really good. They just got to get some of those, iron out the kinks offensively, which I think they will. So, I mean, again, only 9 teams I have for sure playoffs or higher. We'd also have another, 6 teams that are in the maybe playoffs tier. So, as it stands right now, basically all of the teams in the maybe playoffs tier or higher would be getting in. Now, again, it's a little weird because, there's no NFC South team on the top 3 tiers. So, obviously, another spot has to go there, stuff like that. But, as a whole, if you're in the maybe playoffs tier, given how I have it set out, you're probably making the playoffs. Like, the Bills and Browns probably are making the playoffs, I would say. But I just can't say for sure right now. So, that's where I have all of those teams. Kind of an interesting week, interesting season so far. Those are my still 5 Super Bowl contenders, but a different 5. Ravens in, Lions out. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.